Hey YouTubers, today I'm going to be talking about the brutal kidnapping and murder of Emmett Till, a 14-year-old African American boy. He was born on July the 25th, 1941, and he died August the 28th, 1955. Before I do, guys, hit that subscribe button if you have not subscribed. Thank you. His killers were acquitted, and no one ever serve any jail time for that brutal murder. So let's get into it. Emmett was born and raised in Chicago, Illinois. During the summer of 1955, August 1955 to be exact, his mother sent him to visit some relatives near Money, Mississippi, in the Mississippi Delta. Now, YouTubers, you're talking about the Deep South. Jim Crow laws were in effect, and all the racist groups were alive and well and very, very active, like the KKK. So Emmett got to Mississippi. He's visiting his relatives. He arrived on August the 21st, 1955, and on August the 24th, he and his cousin were supposed to be in church. The church where his great-uncle Moss Wright was a preacher. So he and his cousin Curtis decided to skip church that day. So he and his cousin joined some local boys and they decided to go down to the Bryant's grocery and meat market to buy some candy. Later on in court records, it was discovered that Emmett Till had a problem pronouncing words. His mother said in court documents that whenever he stumbled over a word, he was taught to whistle very, very lightly. And he had a problem with words beginning with the letter B. And he wanted bubblegum. So Emmett, his cousin Curtis, as well as some local boys in the neighborhood, went down to the candy shop. Emmett didn't know the boys, but his cousin knew these boys. So on this particular day, Carolyn was alone in the store. Roy wasn't there, and she was at the counter. Her sister-in-law was in the back of the store watching the children. So Emmett's cousin Jones left Emmett in the store with the other boys, and he went across the street to play checkers. The boys' accounting of what happened in the store were different when they were interviewed after Emmett's death. One of them said that he pulled out a wallet and he was explaining the pictures in the wallet. Another one said he whistled at Carolyn. Another one said that he did not whistle. So YouTubers, remember his mother said he had a speech impediment whereby words beginning with the letter B he would stumble over. So he was taught to whistle lightly before pronouncing the word. And that's what he did in that grocery store. He wanted bubblegum, and before pronouncing the word, he lightly whistled. So I think that's what one of the boys heard, and I think that's what Carolyn heard, the whistle, assuming that he was whistling at her. So during the trial, Carolyn Bryant testified that Emmett Till grabbed her hand while she was stocking candy and said, "How about a date, baby?" Which does not even sound right because, you know, a 14-year-old boy is not going to grab a grown woman's hand and say, "How about a date, baby?" Not in the Deep South in 1955, Jim Crow, Mississippi. So Brian testified that she freed herself away from Emmett, and then Emmett said, "You need not be afraid of me, baby. I've been with white women before." She also testified that one of the boys who was with him came in the store and grabbed him and said, "Let's go." So court documents said that Roy, Carolyn's husband, was away on a shrimp trip. And when he got back a couple of days after, he heard what had happened through the grapevine. People were talking about it. Caroline had not told her husband what had happened. She later on said that she did not tell her husband because she did not want him beating up this 14-year-old boy. So Roy became enraged when he heard about what had happened, and he decided to do something about it. So about 2 o'clock in the morning, they drove over to Emmett's uncle's house. They went into the bedroom where Emmett and his 2 cousins were sleeping. They woke the boys up and wanted to know which one was Emmett. Emmett stepped forth, identified himself. They told him to get dressed quickly. In fear of what would happen to Emmett, his great aunt stepped forth, offering money for them to leave him alone. And they refused. One witness said there was a car waiting outside, and when Emmett approached the car, Roy said, "Is this him?" And the person inside the car said yes, and the voice was softer than a man's voice. At that point, Emmett was shoved in the pickup truck and they drove off with him. One person said he heard the screams coming from a barn, and when he went up to the barn to investigate, Roy's half-brother came out and said, "Did you see anything?" And of course he said no, he didn't see anything. Another eyewitness said he saw Roy's half-brother washing blood off his truck. Unfortunately, at that time in the Deep South, Black people were so afraid of retribution that a crime can be taking place right in front of their eyes, and they would not say anything. They would turn the other way. So Roy, Carolyn's husband, and his half-brother had Emmett in the pickup truck, and they drove towards Money, Mississippi. According to eyewitnesses, they drove Emmett Till to a barn and beat him until he was unconscious. An eyewitness by the name of Willie Reed said he was walking home and heard the beating and the crying from the barn from Emmett. Other people who were passing by the barn also heard the cries and the screams. A local neighbor spotted Reed washing blood off the back of the truck and also spotted Emmett Till's boots. And Roy's half-brother said to the neighbor who saw the blood, he said he had killed a deer, and he explained the boots away by saying the boots was his. So in court testimony, it seems as though everyone had a different story. 2 Black men were also accused of helping to beat Emmett Till, and they deny even ever being there. They said they were not present, but Milan accused them of being present. Milan, who is Roy's half-brother, and back then in the South, any crimes a white man was accused of, they would pin it on a Black man. So that was what was happening here. I guess he figured if he was going to be convicted for the crime, he's going to pin it on someone and get off. And YouTubers, remember, Black people were so fearful of the Klan and the retribution of the Klan and the whole white community at large that they would admit to any crime that's pinned on them at that time. But in spite of that fear, these 2 Black men who were accused of helping Roy and his half-brother said they were not there. They were not present when Emmett was being tortured. So after Emmett was tortured, one of his eyes was hanging out the socket. His face could not be recognized. They drove him down to the Tallahassee River, put a barbed wire around his neck, shot him in the head, attached the barbed wire to a cotton gin fan, and threw his body in the river, hoping that the cotton gin fan would be so heavy to weigh him down permanently and no one would discover the body. A few days later, Emmett's body was discovered by two boys who were fishing in the same area. So when the men took Emmett away, they told the great uncle they just wanted to talk to him. And when they did not bring Emmett back within 20 minutes, the great uncle, who is the preacher, said he jumped in his pickup truck, he went to get some gas, and he and another man went looking for Emmett until 8 in the morning, from about 3 o'clock in the morning to 8 o'clock in the morning. A good 5 hours he was looking for Emmett. Could not find Emmett. By this time, Emmett was dead and his body was in the Tallahassee River. By the way I feel, he should have never allowed them to take Emmett. He should have went down fighting with guns blazing because he knew the type of atmosphere and the type of people that he was dealing with. 3 days after Emmett was abducted and murdered, his swollen and disfigured body was found by two boys who were fishing in the Tallahassee River. His head was very badly mutilated. He had been shot above the right ear. An eye was bulging out. It was completely dislodged from the socket. There was evidence that he had been beaten on the back and the hips. When Emmett's body was recovered from the river, he was naked. So these men had stripped him of all his clothes, beaten him severely, concentrating the beating in the back and his hips, gouged out his eye because one of the eyes was hanging out. It was no longer attached. His face was unrecognizable. They could not recognize him when they took him out the river. His great uncle was called to the riverside to identify the body, and they could not identify his face. The only thing they could identify was the ring that he was wearing with his initial inside. So this was a big court case. It sparked the civil rights movement because the crime was so brutal and gruesome, perpetrated on a 14-year-old boy. So a few weeks after the murder, the then 21-year-old Caroline testified in court that Emmett Till had grabbed her by the wrist, verbally harassed her in the grocery store, and she said she was scared to death. The all-white jury cleared her husband Roy Bryant and his half-brother Malam of the crime, and they were free. Both Roy and his brother later publicly admitted their guilt. They said they did it to warn other blacks. Shortly thereafter, Roy disappeared from public view. This crime happened when Caroline was 21 years old. When she turned 72 years old, she did an interview with historian Timothy Tyson. He was writing his book, and the name of the book is called The Blood of Emmett Till. And I guess Bryant decided that she would speak to him because she wanted to get that blood of Emmett Till off her hand before she died. So she admitted that she did lie under oath and all the things she said was not true. The interview happened in 2007. So we don't know if Caroline is still alive. At that time, she was at an undisclosed location, and pretty much she went into hiding because she was so hated. So YouTubers, this story was very typical of how things went in the South. The white woman would lie on a black boy or a man, and then the husband would take retribution against the black family. Sometimes they would take it out on the individual person, or sometimes they take it out on the whole family. They would kill everybody. So it's a very sad story. And I want you guys to drop your comments in the comment section. Tell me how you feel about this story. At this point, we are going to honor Emmett Till's memory. Here are some photographs of Emmett Till. YouTubers, I'm over now. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to my channel and to this video.